Encounter Talks with Dawn at Gessner Ministries, a forum for discussing challenging topics, dissecting truth, discovering hope and light in a world that desperately needs revival.
Hey, Wes.
Good morning.
Yeah, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. Your message on Wednesday, when I watched it, I came to a place of just wanting to take or maybe extract a thought that kept rolling over in my own mind and just maybe take that as our takeaway.
Okay.
I know that you were in Psalms chapter 1 for your message on Wednesday. I wanted to discuss with you living out your faith in our culture today, and I know there was a point in the message that said something about being planted or pointless. And obviously, the ideal for any person would be to be planted in his faith and his Christian walk. But I guess for me, my one question I think I have is being planted or the thought of living life pointlessly. That's a challenge that I think a lot of people deal with because of the culture that surrounds us, right?
Correct.
And so I guess for me, I wonder if it also, and boy, this may sound a bit, maybe this whole session will be a bit negative. I don't mean it to be that, but it sort of takes me to the heart of what I'm wanting to discuss, because I think it might expose even a greater issue, because when we're challenged with living a life that is focused versus one that is pointless, and the focus being on Christ, obviously, I think we're dealing with the church in part anyway, that might be at a different place in how they are challenging people to live out their faith. So that's sort of the takeaway that I was feeling from our from your message on Wednesday. So,
Okay.
am I making any sense to the concept of the part that the church is
No,
I would say responsible, but certainly the role they're playing in all of this?
yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the church, big C, which means not an individual church, but I think from our context, meaning yours and mine, and most of the people that will watch this, we have to talk about the church that was known at one point as the evangelicals, or people that were more fervent in their faith, fervent in believing the Bible, every word of it, not cutting and pasting, not leaving out whole sections because it didn't fit their lifestyle. All of that was pretty black and white. And in the last 25 years, that particular movement has, in my mind, all but disappeared. And so now you go to the local church down the street that, I'm not talking the formal churches or liturgical churches or mainline denominations. They have their own thing, and we're not going to talk about that. I'm talking about the churches where you would expect to find them living according to the Word of God. You would expect them to find a vibrant, healthy, living faith, not just something that is about showing up on a Sunday and checking that box off. And so when I talk about the church, when I think about the church you're describing, those are the churches, and I think our churches that fit that description have some really serious challenges, and there are good people who are coming, but there's been such a fear of taking a stand on anything. There's such a fear of offending someone. There's such a fear of that we now have people that are just, I mean, I don't know. I've never thought in my lifetime I would ever see sort of style choices and decisions, the way people live. I mean, it goes, you know, I read an article the other day, why is it okay for Christians to cuss now? And that's just one example, but it goes on and on and on. And it's like all those things that were sort of black and white, taboo, live your faith purely, don't be like the world. Well, you surely wouldn't want to be like the world now. And yet that's what I feel like as I look around, and in a lot of the churches that I've been affiliated with in the last 25 years, there's not a lot of difference sometimes between the culture, the world, the mentality, and the people in the church.
Yeah, and so
almost, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess that's why, for me, that's at the very heart of what you were discussing, because if we're trying to suggest to someone that we need to be planted in our faith, or else we're going to just be living a pointless life. And yet, when we try to point them to living this really focused life, what we're pointing them to is looking very different in our culture today than it did a few years ago. And it's just that slow erosion that has happened when we just take a look back, I think.
Yeah, and that's accelerated now in the last couple of years.
Oh my word!
To that you can't hardly keep up with it. So you come back to the church world, and I'm facing this right now because I'm now working alongside of a church, and I preached a message 2 weeks ago that in my mind would have been just basic 101 Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, you live like Jesus lived, love like he loved, leave behind the legacy he left behind. And I knew the whole time I was preaching it that this was going to feel like a 9-pound sledgehammer. Because, to me, it was just basic Christianity, like the lowest form of Christianity. But because we don't hear that, we don't get called to it, we're just sort of, I don't know, it's very distressing, and I don't want to make a big deal about it or try to set myself apart from people. But it's when you know what the Bible says, you know what Jesus has wanted, you know what the price that people have paid through the centuries for their faith to go counterculture, and then you come across people that are just like, oh, no, the Bible, it doesn't matter, and we got to love everybody. Yeah, you do have to love everybody, but you don't have to agree with things that they're doing if it runs counter to the Bible. And it's just so, it's disheartening, and I'm sure that's what pastors and prophets and preachers have felt for all across the time since Jesus left this earth. But it's a really interesting time to try to be asking people to plant themselves in a way that is unmovable, like a tree planted by the waters. I tried to use the illustration, Don. If I watch TV at all, it's going to be usually a black and white movie of some kind from the past, and from the 30s or 40s. And I'm always amazed. And I'm not saying those people were godly people, because they weren't. But the writers in those, it's unbelievable to me how many times there are scriptural references, Bible references, so that even the people who were writing this stuff at least had some working knowledge of the Bible or how to work. It was, of course, now you would never get any of that. So it's just really interesting. I don't know. I think there's still hope, and I think the call of Christ is still strong, and I think for those that and hunger after it, he's available, but it may cost us more than we ever thought it would to walk that way?
Well, I do think it will cost us more, because for those of us who choose to take a stand and to believe that the cost of being a Christian is significant, at least in the culture that we now live in. And when I say all of that, I'm talking about the American culture. That's what I know,
Yeah.
But it's obvious that there are some real challenges that when someone is being pointed to Christ, if it's a Christianity that is very shallow, then the change that needs to occur in somebody's life is not happening.
Right.
And so that in and of itself creates frustration for that person who's looking for the answer, but they're not being satisfied with the result of what they're seeking if they're not getting it to the level that it brings about change, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this self-righteously at all, because I wrestle with these things. But most people, even in the church world, it's some finding a way to shift our heads and our hearts to heavenly or godly goals rather than earthly goals. And most of us are still trying to figure out a way to get the next thing that we think we want or need, not so much need that we want. It's just a continual pour billions of dollars into our houses that someday you're going to walk away from because you're not taking it with you. We have to have. It's just, I know I sound cranky when I talk, but it's just the Bible call. When I spoke a couple weeks ago at our church, one of the points I made was that Jesus calls us to downward mobility, and I'm not the first one to do that, but I'll guarantee you most people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all about upward mobility, especially in America. I know we have people watching from around the world. I don't see a good thing. If you're continually having to up your whatever it is, your status in the world based on your stuff, you're probably on the wrong track.
Well, it's the wrong focus, like you were talking about in the Wednesday message. It's the wrong focus. Well, man, I had another thought. I kind of lost track of what it was. That's not unusual. Maybe I got it back. I'm making a statement, but it's really a question, I think, for you. Does just getting older, which we all are, but at some point you keep maturing and you get to this age where maybe you and I are at now. Does that play a part in the seriousness of our faith? Because we're some of the focus that we once had on the here and now, and in even what you were just saying a moment ago, it's the upward mobility. We see where some of that doesn't have much significance anymore. Does age play a part in that, I guess?
Well, I'm sure. I hope so. I hope. I don't think for everybody, because I still see people until the time they die, and they might be in their 80s, still collecting and still gathering and still hoarding and still not for everybody. But I think for some of us, I think you experienced this with your own parents. I know I did. I was shocked when my parents finally both passed away, how little I wanted stuff.
Yeah.
And so then I start looking at this going, why am I hanging on to this stuff? Why?
Yeah.
Why? I know John Wesley talked about that with just so little of this world's goods. And I think that's a goal. It's really a goal, not for everybody, but I feel like the more we can strip away from us, peel off the stuff we're bombarded with it constantly. I mean, from the you shave with, to the drive, to the medicine you take, to it's on and on and on. If you step back and look at how they're advertising it, it's all for the upward mobility. It's all for making you more of this culture and have more than the rest of the other guy. All wrong. It's all wrong. And
Yeah.
I'm fighting that. And it feels like a very lonely battle, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I want us to just kind of close with you sharing the illustration in case somebody missed it, because it was powerful. And it really capsulizes for me how our focus really needs to be. And it was the traveler in the desert
With the
where
water.
he was in need of water. Just share that just to close this, because it was powerful.
Well, I think, I thought that I probably ought to. I'm just old enough to know what it means to prime a pump. Most people would have no clue what that means. But the old wells that people used to pump a handle and get water out of, and I don't know why this, so I don't know how to explain it. For some reason, sometimes you could pour water down through the pump, and it would prime the pump, and it would make water come out. So the story is, this man was traveling through the desert. He was out of water. He was nearing dehydration, and comes across finally a well and a pump, and there is a pitcher of water there and a note that says, in essence, pour this all into the pump, and you'll have all the water you want to drink. And of course, his dilemma was, what if I pour it in and it doesn't work? I could just drink the water. And it was a real dilemma. And finally, he, by faith, poured it in, and it did work. He filled up every container he could. And then in the end, he added to the note, and I can't remember exactly what it was, for the next person, use this water, prime the pump. There'll be plenty of water when you do. That was kind of the illustration that was for you and I. This is pretty much a world that's a desert if you're trying to live by the Bible. And, I keep going back to the metaphor. Jesus said to the woman at the well, I'll give you rivers of water, a life after water that you'll never thirst again. Another place, he said, rivers of water that'll flow out of your heart. He is the life-giving water, and he is where we need to be seen, where our trust needs to be.
Yeah. Well, it just, for me, when you were sharing that illustration on Wednesday in the message, I just thought, wow, we are brought up to this very intense moment of a decision. And that was a big decision for that person to make at that moment. And we're going to be faced with that kind of intensity in choosing whether we're going to be all in for Christ or if we're going to try to just make it easy for us. And in so doing, the consequences are starkly different depending what our decision is. Yeah.
Yep. No question about it. So.
Well, okay, Wes. I'll let you finish your road trip, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. Take a moment to share with your friends.